Was there ever a moment while shooting where you're like, what did I get myself into? Like, because the pressure.
It was more like, was there ever not a moment like that?
I got a funny feeling. Yeah.
Welcome, folks. I'm Jaby, Koay, joined by ACHARA, KIRK.
Hi there.
And a special guest today, Sam HARGRAVE, who directed Extraction.
Hello, everybody. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me, y'all.
Is that the appropriate way to say your last name? Just so I'm getting that right.
HARGRAVE, that is correct.
HARGRAVE. Where's that from? Just out of curiosity, that name.
It's an English name. Get it from my mammy and my pappy.
Oh, nice. Very cool. Oh, by the way, we literally just finished the movie.
Yeah. It was,
Okay.
It was intense.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed it.
Great.
Yeah.
The first thing I wanted to ask you about, which I don't know if you had a say in the matter, but being the director of the film, I imagine you might have, is the sound design of the suppressors. Did you have any say-so in that?
I did.
Because I noticed it was louder, which is what I'm not used to in movies, unlike John Wick 2, where they're like, pew pew, across the...
Yeah. It's a delicate balance, right? Because, real suppressed weapons are very quiet. And so because we decided to use those weapons kind of in the climactic battle, we wanted to make sure that the gun had a character to it, had a voice. With all this automatic gunfire going on, if it was just like click, 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 it wouldn't really have as much impact as we wanted. So for each of the silenced weapons, the one Saju had and for Tyler Rigg, we took a little bit of movie license and gave them we tried to keep the metallic sound, but also gave them turn the juice up a little bit to give them character.
Gotcha. I actually thought that was probably more in line with a realistic sound, because randomly on YouTube, I looked up silencer, Wilson suppressor, whatever, and they're generally loud weapons.
Yeah, we did. It was so I would say we're somewhere in the middle. We took a little license, and again, they're meant to suppress the sound and suppress the the muzzle flash. So we took those two things, sound and muzzle flash, and just kind of gave them we Jackie Chan'd them, reality plus 10%. So we enhanced it a little bit.
I like that phrasing. We Jackie Chan'd it. Was there anything in particular that inspired the action design for this particular film?
Whenever designing action for any film, the goal is to kind of be true to the character, where they come from, who they are, and then just try to find a perspective that may be a little different than people haven't seen before. For this character being Australian SAS, because we decided to keep him, regional accent that Chris has. We didn't want to have him do an accent for, the whole show. We just tried to be true to what those guys would know, and he's got a very forward-moving, aggressive style, because he's not trying to parry and block and trap people. He's like, let's deal with the issue at hand as quickly and brutally and efficiently as possible. And so we tried to stay true to that while still having some fun, because there are other martial arts fans and fight fans that we're servicing. So you're always playing a delicate balance with action design.
As a fight fan, I loved the fight choreography, especially the CQC stuff going on with the gun work and whatnot, like gun fu. I just thought there was some brilliant stuff going on in there.
We had a great team, putting on all of their years of expertise onto the screen, and it was a really fun process to see them work and to come in. I put my twist on things too. I couldn't resist. I had to have a say now and then, but I really appreciate all the hard work they did, because they did. They gave them a pretty cool style.
You're working with a lot of foreign actors. What was the whole casting process like for that? Because you had some well-known actors and then lesser-known actors as well. So what was the whole process?
This film has a very multicultural feel, and we wanted to stay true to that and to the region where we were shooting. Sarah Finn was our casting director, and Joe Russo would weigh in, and we tried to reach out and find actors from that region of the world there's so many talented actors over there.
Yeah.
And they have a rich history in cinema, and it's really just, they've got a lot of great talented performers. And so we wanted to find people that kind of fit the aesthetic, stylistically, acting-wise, that we were going for, but also that would support because the movie on Netflix and going worldwide, we wanted people that had a following for at least some of them. So we were very fortunate, I think, in our casting, ending up with Randeep Huda, as our Saju. I think he did a great job. But then finding, our Ovi with Rudraksh Jaswal, he absolutely brought an innocence and kind of purity into the role that was essential for it to work in the way that we needed to with Chris's character, kind of the play opposite of him.
And that was one of the things that I really enjoyed, because like I enjoy action, but I also love drama, and I think that there was this really lovely balance between both, so it didn't feel like it was just action heavy, but there was a lot of heart as well. And yeah, I cried. So
Well, wait. That actually might be one of the best compliments that a director could receive, or for me, because what we're going for is to have heart at the center of the film, so that it's not just a bunch of, I mean, there's a lot of action, like it's action heavy, but so it's not just action, try to infuse a little bit of drama in the action and then take some time to really build the characters and the relationships so that you care about them during the action. And I'm glad it worked out, or you had that response.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, we saw your very nice little cameo in the film. And I was just wondering, because you have a background in stunts, did you volunteer to do any stunts in this film, or you just left that up to your guys?
No, that was, I did enough stunts behind the camera. I was operating for the 10 days of, the sequence we call the Oneer, and I was strapped to the hood of cars and jumping off buildings, and I had my fill for that. I was happy to let the guys be on camera and, do what they do best and perform. We got some great ones.
Well, like you mentioned, we saw the behind the scenes little thing that was released, and you were like literally on the hood of a car shooting. What was that challenge like versus just doing stunts in general?
It's mixing, both, because you're having to perform, you're right along with the people, the performers doing the stunts, but you're also having to split your focus so that you're keeping them in frame, because you want people to see this as you want it to be seen. So you don't want to get, too shaky, though it's hard when you're on the top of a car to keep it super steady, but to, keep them in frame and keep up with them and just be able to move with the action, which is one reason why I wanted to shoot it, is because with a lot of the fight stuff, having a background in that, I was able to see the moves and anticipate when things would, where they'd be coming and where they'd be going, and able to do the dance with the characters, because I'm used to fight scenes and being in and amongst them and performing them. So having that kind of background and knowledge allowed me to do the dance while looking through camera. But that was one of the hardest parts, was adjusting and getting used to, like, there's a slight delay in the monitor of the camera, because I couldn't be looking through the eyepiece where it was kind of more in real time. I had to go through a monitor so I could have peripheral vision. So when somebody falls on the ground or drops a gun, I can see that while keeping them in frame, try not to step on the performer. So there's a lot, but there's a lag in the video, right? There's like a half second to a second delay in the monitor. So you're having to anticipate what's happening while watching it both on the monitor and in real time. It's like it's a bit of a mind-bending experience.
I can only imagine. That would drive me crazy. That 1 second delay makes all the world of a difference.
Yeah. So I requested, because I had come across that with other cameras in the past. So I requested to have the gear we were going to shoot there at rehearsals, so that I could just get used to it. Because once you get used to it, it does get easier. Mm-hmm. But if you're not used to it, it does play games with your mind.
I have two maybe boring questions. How much time did you spend on those dramatic moments? Like, because I have a tiny bit of experience with fight choreography, so I know how much time you invest into, staging the choreography, practicing and shooting it, like take after take. What was that challenge like of shooting the dramatic scenes, and how much time did you spend on it?
Well, the challenge was big for me shooting dramatic scenes, because it was, kind of my first time helming a film as the main unit director, and so I wanted to make sure that, because I wasn't just able to express myself through action, it had to be through words and blocking out scenes between two actors. I really focused on that leading up to the movie. You have to be as prepared as you can with the script and know what you want out of the scene and where the characters are going. And hopefully you get time with your actors ahead of time to discuss backstory and, where are we coming from in this scene, where are we going, what's the conflict, what are we trying to say. If you have that time, it's great, and even rehearsal time is even better. Sometimes actors' schedules, they're so busy that they show up on the day and now you're like, oh boy, hope they've done work. But we were so fortunate, with actors of the caliber that I got to work with, that they would show up, even the day players who just showed up for a day, they were so prepared, made my job easy. So then I could focus on maybe whatever they brought to the table, molding it into what I was looking for, and then trying to get the story across that I wanted. So I was very fortunate to work with some great actors.
Now, Joe wrote this, correct?
He did. Joe Russo wrote the script, and he actually wrote it many years ago based on a graphic novel that he also wrote.
Oh, wow.
Called Ciudad. It took place in South America. It was a very similar story, slightly different, but then he rewrote it after South America, and that region was, I think, a little bit, at least in his mind and in the Western world, a little played out, like with Narcos and Sicario. The Colombian drug lord or the South American drug lord is it's like something we're very used to seeing. So he wanted to kind of turn that around and look at it from a different perspective, and I think it was a pretty cool idea, because that part of the world has not really been featured in Western cinema very heavily. So it was a cool idea, and the script was his, and it was a really fun script to read when I first read it.
I will say, like, I loved how you guys, like you said earlier, you featured like minorities in the film, or like people who are just not American, Indian actress and actors and whatnot. Because like I didn't expect to have any emotional connection with the guy that Chris Hemsworth later on pairs up with.
Right.
Just that's the time that was spent there. I'm like, wow, this is really un-American in terms of like, you know what I mean? Because like normally that's just an ancillary character who's there to support your main dude, but you actually gave time to that, and I appreciate that.
Oh, great. Well, I appreciate you saying that. It was important to me, important to all of us, to give these characters a voice, to give them a backstory, so that they weren't just an ancillary character. They meant something to the story. They were there for a reason. Yeah. And, because for me, Saju was always one of my favorite characters reading the script, because he's got the film plays in a lot of gray areas morally. The good and bad is very much different sides of the same coin in this world. But I thought his motivations, at least, were some of the more pure motivations. It's kind of for love of his family and to protect his family. Yeah. And so he does some pretty gnarly things, but it's the motivation at least is fairly pure. So to give the audience a peek into that life, so that it's real and you can relate to that, so that when he later on his path changes and he comes across Rick, you can get on board with that team up. Right.
Was there any what do you call them, compromises that you and Joe had to make with each other in telling the story? Because like obviously he wrote it, but it's your vision now. Like, what did you have to change, or like, and what, like, you know what I mean? I'm just curious about that. Yeah.
It was a really fun learning experience and a fun dance that we did. And luckily, Joe's a great dude, good friend of mine, a mentor. We've known each other for a long time. The balance, though, is you're now directing a movie for the guy who wrote it and who is one of the top directors in the business. So obviously, he's going to have a way that he would do it. So the balance here, is, but my hat's off to him, and I'm thankful and respect his candor with me when the time was right, but also his being open to my ideas. Because again, he would have a way he would do it. I'm sure it'd be an amazing movie had he directed it. But he kind of just, at times would voice his opinion, but just gave me the reins and allowed me kind of to make decisions. And I was involved early on in kind of the writing process of this newer draft, because I had a few changes I wanted to make. And again, he was very open to that, and it was pretty cool experience to work with him and to learn kind of the back and forth of working with someone who is a writer, director, producer, just a great creative mind, and kind of feeling that presence. Yeah. But him being so great to allow me the freedom to express myself creatively. It was a really fun experience.
That's cool.
That's really cool. You mentioned that there's a lot of internationalness to it, like all of the different characters, it being in a different country. And so much of it is in another language as well, which I really appreciated because it felt really real.
Authentic.
Yeah, it was authentic. Yeah. So I'm just wondering, for you as an American, like, how was it directing those scenes in a completely different language?
That was one of the biggest challenges of the entire project. Directing the scenes with a lot of the international cast was an extremely challenging thing because I don't speak Hindi and I don't speak Bengali. To try to direct actors, who were speaking that language, fortunately, most of the cast spoke English, and so we could communicate at least to some degree. But I also had an interpreter there because we had actors whose native languages weren't what they were portraying in the film. And so they were working with them to work on the finer details and intricacies of the accent, the regional dialect. But the cool thing was it got to a place where I could understand what was happening without speaking the language. I didn't need to fully understand the words to know when the take was good or when it was bad. I would confirm with the interpreter and say, did we get the words out? And they'd be like, yes. It was just in the intention of the actor's performance. Mm-hmm. I could understand it. So if it felt good to me, I'd be like, I think we got it. How were the words? And be like, great, move on. So it was a really fun developing that rapport with the actors, a non-verbal communication that was really exciting.
Before I forget, I just wanted to give my compliments to the fact that you gave arcs to so many people in this movie. Everyone had an arc because I realized when, I don't want to say what happens, and for those who haven't seen it yet, but like there's a moment that happens that's big, and I'm like, oh wow, like even he got what he was after. It was weird.
Yeah, it was, it's no Avengers Endgame, you're not got 32 different characters that you're weaving in and out, but there are multiple characters who we wanted to make sure got the appropriate screen time and just attention to detail of their motivations and stories, and that was on the script at the script level was very important to us, but then also when we were shooting it, we wanted to make sure and try to balance that as best we could,
How was it directing yourself?
I gained so much respect for actor directors, like Mel Gibson directing Braveheart, let's forget it, done. I bow down to that, Ben Affleck directing, Argo, Oscar nominated or winning movies. Because I think I was on camera for 3 days total, and those were the most difficult, stressful days I've ever experienced, because you're not only trying to act in a somewhat decent way and not totally ruin your own movie, but you're having to pay attention to all the other aspects, and it just takes more time because you have to, after each take, you got to stop and go back and review it and then think, okay, as a director, what am I tell myself? It's a really interesting process, and I gained a lot of respect for actor directors who successfully pull off those two jobs at the same time.
That's cool.
How much of your stunt team was from the States and how much were local? And what was the experience of working with the local stunt people? How is that different?
We had an extremely international stunt team. Most of the, department heads are Daniel Stevens, Michael Lair, main doubles, and a few of the, fight teams Gomez and Anthony and Dan. They came from the States with us. But then we had an Indian match. And then when we shot in Thailand, we also had a Thai stunt coordinator. Just because you need that person to communicate quickly and efficiently with the people, have access to the stunt community in that specific country. And so I'd say the numbers were split pretty evenly, but more heavily on the local side. So when we were in India, we had more Indian stunt performers than we did, American, Canadian, or Australian or whatever. And then when we were in Thailand, the same, mostly Thai performers, because they just more readily available, and then budgetarily, there's a lot of reasons, but that experience it's always incredible, when you work in another country, how, in my experience, how welcoming and understanding the stunt team is. Because, you imagine somebody else coming into your backyard and being like, all right, guys, here's what you're going to do. We're going to tell you how to, because they've got their own flow. They've got their own system of doing things. And some other team rocks up and says, nah, don't do it that way, do it this way. So I really respect their openness and willingness to work with other ideas and different ways of doing things. And I had a great experience, and I think Daniel Stevens did too. And you have to get him on here and ask him.
Okay. Did Chris do a lot of his own stunts, and did he get any injuries while shooting?
No injuries were sustained that I know of. If he did, then he didn't tell me about it. He did all of the fighting in this movie.
Wow.
And especially in that extended sequence, our 11-minute, 39-second Warner. I don't remember exactly what it is. I'm kidding. It's 11 minutes, 39 seconds. But that sequence was especially important for him to be heavily involved, because we weren't doing traditional coverage. We weren't cutting to different angles or hiding, going over the shoulder of the stunt double or what have you. And you couldn't do 4 or 5 moves, then cut. Okay, let's pick up the next 4 or 5. It was sometimes 2-3 minutes long, different portions of the take that we stitched together, 40, 50 moves. And if you get to 39 and you drop your gun or you stumble or whatever, you got to go back to the beginning and start all over again. So he had to do a lot of rehearsal, a lot of training, and he did most of the stuff. Big things where you could risk injury, we had to swap out and use the double just because that's what they're there for. And, we had a lot more to shoot. That was day 1 through 10 of our shooting schedule with some big stunts and big fights. So we had to be very careful and very safe because it was a long way to go. We had, 48 more days after the end of that sequence to go and a lot more action to shoot. So we had to be very careful with our hero.
This is a question I'll probably ask for Patreon because I don't want to give anything away. I very much enjoyed the soundtrack. I'm a I'm very much into soundtracks, movie scores, like yourself. Did you listen to anything to like, in your mind, figure out how you wanted to craft certain scenes?
Yeah, sometimes I really would play the music and just sit there and be like, how do I see the movie in my head? Because that's important, because if I can't see it, how am I gonna tell other people to help me craft it so that all can see it? But there were times when I'd get like an idea while listening, would be like, ooh, like that, the pacing right there, we could, if we did this, if we just added this shot, or we should I want to make sure and get this moment because that would go really well with this musical, style. And again, we hadn't composed the score yet, but this was just inspirational. And I think it was really important to the process because action, like music, it's a rhythm, and there's like a flow to it, and you gotta go up and down and back and forth. And I think the balance or the best action sequences in movies have that melodic flow to them. And so, hopefully it worked out, and I'm glad you appreciate the score. I think Henry would be happy.
Was there ever a moment while shooting where you're like, fuck, what did I get myself into? Like, because the pressure.
It was more like, was there ever not a moment like that? It was, there were many times where I would be sitting there. I mean, oftentimes in my hotel room before going to set in the morning, just be like, what the heck am I doing? Like, what have I gotten myself into? Like, it's so much. But then as soon as you get on set and the energy of the crew and the cast, and now you've got a plan, you've done all this stuff, it would fade away usually very quickly and just be in the moment. And that's all you can control, right? Is moment to moment. Prepare as best you can, put as much work into the preparation as you can, and then just kind of let that go and be present, and then try to make the best decision in the moment, and hopefully it goes well.
That's inspiring to hear, actually. I'm glad you said that. I love finding gems in fight scenes that are like unique. And there was two things that happened where I just lost my shit. One was in the middle of a CQC moment, and Chris Hemsworth reloads his gun and shoots. I was like, what the fuck? That is so cool. And then later on, in the middle of the street fight after they roll off the building, they're fighting, and then a rickshaw goes by in between the fight, which is very Indian, because they're like, I don't give a shit, I have to go. I love that. I love that idea.
Thank you very much. I mean, the rickshaw passing was inspired by living in India for 5 months, and it's just a flow, which is crazy because I never saw a traffic accident, but you also never saw a traffic light. But you would there was just a constant flow, and there was a method to the madness, like this beautiful chaos where you're just like, how does this happen? Yeah. Like, how does this exist? And it does. And so we just thought that'd be a fun thing to throw in there, is like in the middle of this intense battle, just someone drives through, and you're like, what? And so I'm glad you appreciated that. Now the CQC stuff, to take it a little step further, of what he did with the gun is, and this is nerding out, and I can do this all day, but because when he goes to shoot the guy, and the guy grabs the barrel of his Glock, when he fires one round, but now because the barrel didn't cycle, the empty is still in the chamber. Mm-hmm. So the methodology for clearing that is to seat the magazine and rack the shell out. So you tap and rack. But he had one hand closed, so he tapped it on his vest and racked it on his vest, and then shot. And it all happened so fast that it's hard to catch. But that little detail was, there's many levels to it. Yeah. But I'm glad you caught that moment.
That's so cool.
That was badass.
I appreciate it on a whole other level.
Just watch the movie again. Just keep the views going.
I really appreciate you taking the time to do this, man. I love the film. I love the action in it, and I look forward to seeing what you do next from here, man.
Hey, thank you very much. I appreciate the compliments, and thanks for having me on.
All right, dude. Talk to you soon. Take care.
All right. Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Hopefully you enjoyed Extraction. Be sure to check it out. It's on Netflix now. And we have some special little snippets for Patreon exclusively that we got from that interview. And so after you watch the film, go check out the little special clips that we reserved for Patreon. They're spoilers, just as a heads up.
Yeah, you have to watch the film first. So do that first, and then come check it out on Patreon.
Right, thanks so much for hanging out. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that bell icon so you get notified every time we drop another video. All notifications. Check out our other reactions, reviews, interviews, short films, and vlogs. I am Jaby Koay. This is
ACHARA KIRK.
Peace out.